I was 28 when the letter arrived. Thick paper. No return address. A postmark from Chicago, though I hadn't been there in over a decade. My name was written in ink that had slightly smudged, like the pen had been held too tight or the writer had second thoughts. I stood in the kitchen with the envelope unopened, holding it like it might burn through my hand. It had been years since I'd seen that handwriting tight, slanted, careful. I didn't even need to read the name. It was from my mother. The same woman who disappeared on a Sunday morning when I was 14. No warning. No suitcase. No note on the fridge. She was just gone. One minute she was making pancakes, humming along to old Fleetwood Mac. The next, the house was airless. Like she'd taken the oxygen with her. My father waited 3 days before calling the police. I waited 6 years before I let myself believe she wasn't coming back. And now, 14 years later, I was holding her words. I didn't open the letter right away. I made coffee. I cleaned the counter. I paced. I checked the locks on the doors like I was expecting her to walk in and finish her sentence from that morning. When I finally tore it open, the first sentence nearly stopped my heart. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone again, but this time, not by choice. The rest of the letter was short. 2 pages. It didn't explain much. Just a few lines that felt like breadcrumbs dropped in the dark. I made mistakes, but not the ones you think. You deserve to know what really happened. There's a key taped under the dresser in room 304 at the Bellevue Hotel, downtown Chicago. I checked in under the name Claire Bell. The answers are there. I hope someday you'll understand why I couldn't stay. It was signed simply. M. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I booked a one-way ticket. I hadn't been back to Chicago since she left. I told myself I never would. That city had always felt like a wound, open, unfinished, and too quiet in the wrong places. But if there was one thing I learned from her leaving, it's that silence always hides something bigger. And now, I was ready to make noise. Chicago greeted me with its usual contradiction: cold wind, warm streets, and a skyline that looked like ambition carved into steel. I hadn't told anyone I was coming. Not my friends. Not my job. Not even my roommate, who probably thought I was just out on another weekend trip to clear my head. But this wasn't about clearing anything. This was about uncovering. The Bellevue Hotel sat on the edge of downtown, caught between old brick buildings and glass towers trying too hard to be modern. The front desk clerk barely looked up when I walked in. I gave the name Claire Bell and expected resistance. But he just nodded. Room 304, 3rd floor, keycard handed over like I belonged there. I hesitated at the door for a moment. Then I slid the key through the reader. The light blinked green. The room was clean, too clean. Not like someone had just checked out, but like no one had ever lived in it. Everything looked untouched, staged. There was a faint scent of lavender and something older underneath it. Dust maybe. Or time. I walked to the dresser and dropped to my knees. And there it was, just like the letter said. Taped to the underside of the bottom drawer, a small black key with a paper tag tied to it. On the tag was a number 58. There was no explanation. No safe in the room. No lockbox. Nothing obvious. I sat on the bed, the key in my palm. My mind raced. Was it for a storage unit? A locker? A mailbox? I started listing everything it could be. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something strange. This wasn't just about information. This was a path. My mom didn't leave me a letter and vanish for nothing. She wanted me to find something or someone. I searched the room again. This time slower. I checked under the mattress, behind the mirror, even behind the wall art. And then I found it. A folded piece of paper slipped inside the Gideon Bible in the nightstand drawer. On it, written in the same careful handwriting. The locker is at Union Station, West End. Ask no questions. Open it alone. At the bottom was another note, smaller this time. Almost like an afterthought. You might not like what you find, but you deserve to know. My pulse quickened. Whatever had happened 14 years ago, it didn't just involve leaving. It involved hiding. And now, for the first time since she disappeared, I was closer to the truth than I'd ever been. Union Station was louder than I remembered. Voices echoed off marble columns. Suitcases rolled across tile like distant thunder. Travelers moved fast, like they were late for something more important than time. I wasn't late. I was exactly where I needed to be. The West End lockers weren't easy to find. Tucked behind a newsstand and vending machines, they looked forgotten. Like a relic from before everything went digital. Sturdy metal boxes with scratched numbers and chipped paint. Locker number 58 sat in the middle row. I hesitated before using the key. My mom's handwriting echoed in my mind. You might not like what you find. The lock turned smoothly. No resistance. Just a soft click, like it had been waiting. Inside was a single worn leather bag. Zipper slightly open. I lifted it out. It was heavier than it looked. The handle was cracked. The leather faded. It smelled like cedar and old paper. I took it to a bench away from the crowds. Unzipping it felt like opening a chapter someone never intended to publish. Inside were three things. A stack of letters, bundled in a red ribbon. A passport, not mine. A photo, torn down the middle. I started with the letters. They were all addressed to one person, Michael D. Harper, my father. Each envelope had been opened and resealed. All were dated between 2008 and 2010, the years right after she vanished. All were written by her. I opened one. Michael, I know you won't believe me. You never did. But I had no choice. Not after what I found. I need you to protect Emma. Keep her away from Chicago. Keep her away from him. Please don't let him find her. The ink trailed off, smudged like water had touched the page. Who was him? I looked at the passport next. It was foreign, Canadian. Different name. Different photo. But it was my mother. No question. Her eyes didn't lie. She had a second identity. A second life. Then the photo. It showed three people. My mother, a man I didn't recognize, and a child who wasn't me. She looked happy. Not fake happy. Real. Free. But someone had torn the photo down the center, right through the man's face. And on the back, in tiny handwriting. Not safe. Not for her. Not again. That's when it hit me. My mother didn't run away from us. She was running from someone else. And she didn't just leave clues. She left warnings that I spent the next 2 hours sitting in a corner of Union Station, my phone in airplane mode, the bag at my feet, heart pounding with a rhythm that wasn't mine. The name on the passport was Margaret Lane. Birthplace, Buffalo, New York. Issued in Toronto. The photo was clearly my mother, just years older than I remembered her. Same eyes. Same quiet confidence. But her smile was different. There was something in it, something like relief. Or escape. I searched the name online using a public kiosk in the station. Margaret Lane had no digital footprint. No address. No social media. Not even a driver's license. Whoever she'd been pretending to be, she'd done it well. I turned back to the photo. The torn half was jagged, uneven. Whoever ripped it hadn't done it out of care. It was fast, emotional. The child in the image was around 5. Curly hair, light jacket, eyes wide open like she didn't understand the camera. Or maybe she did, and just didn't like what it captured. I flipped the image again. That tiny handwriting on the back echoed in my chest. Not safe. Not for her. Not again. Who was she? And what did my mother mean by again? I gathered the letters, the passport, and the photo back into the bag and headed out. But as I reached the top of the escalator, I froze. A man in a dark coat was standing near the lockers. He wasn't doing anything obvious, just leaning, arms crossed, watching. But his eyes moved fast, scanning people too carefully, like he wasn't looking for something, but someone. I stepped back just enough to avoid his line of sight. He didn't seem like airport security or hotel staff. He looked normal, forgettable, but that's what made it worse. My instinct kicked in. I looped around the mezzanine level, found a different exit, and grabbed a cab. Halfway to my hotel, I realized something that twisted my stomach into a knot. I hadn't told anyone I was going to Union Station. So how did someone know to be waiting there? Back in the hotel room, I locked the door, closed the curtains, and laid everything out on the bed again. The letters, the torn photo, the passport. I didn't know what scared me more, the man at the station, or the way none of this surprised me anymore. A part of me had always felt there was more to the story, that my mother didn't just disappear because of a bad argument or a failed marriage. It never felt finished. And now, the pieces were starting to fit, just not in a way I was ready for. I opened another letter, one dated 3 weeks after her disappearance. Michael, you told me not to get involved, and I didn't listen. I thought the documents were enough. But now they know about Emma. She's not just my daughter. You never asked the right questions. Please, keep her away from Chicago. If you love her, let her grow up without this shadow. I read the lines twice, then 3 more times. What did she mean, not just my daughter? I dropped the letter and opened the photo again. That little girl, maybe 4 or 5. She looked nothing like me, but she was next to my mother, in her arms. If I was 13 when my mom left, that would mean this girl was born after she disappeared. Or worse, before. I felt something cold in my chest. Not fear, something more hollow. Like part of me had been erased without my consent. I searched every letter, line by line. One had a hospital's name scribbled in the margin, St. Joseph's Clinic, Joliet. That was my next stop. But I couldn't shake the feeling I was being followed. The man from the station kept reappearing in my mind. His face wasn't distinctive, but his presence had carved itself into me. I called a rideshare under a different name. Took the long way around. Watched every mirror like I was in a movie I hadn't agreed to be part of. St. Joseph's was old. Brick. Quiet. The kind of place that still used paper files. A woman at the front desk looked up as I approached. I gave the name Margaret Lane. She hesitated, typed, then looked up slowly. There was a file, she said quietly. But it's restricted. Why? I asked. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Not suspicious, more like sad. Because the child was placed in protective custody. There were threats. My throat went dry. What was her name? She looked down again. I can't share that. But then she did something unexpected. She scribbled a note on a post-it, folded it, and slid it across the counter without making eye contact. I took it, walked out, and didn't open it until I was back in the car. It had one name, Nora J. Lane, and a single sentence. She was placed with a private family in Oak Park. She doesn't know. Oak Park felt like another country. Tree-lined streets, brick sidewalks, kids riding bikes and lazy loops. It was hard to believe anything dangerous could have roots here. But I learned better. The quietest places often held the loudest secrets. The address on the note led me to a modest two-story house painted soft blue. The porch light was on, even though the sun hadn't set yet. There were wind chimes by the door. The kind of detail that seemed too gentle to exist in the same story I was in. I sat across the street for 10 minutes before I got out of the car. My palms were damp. My legs felt disconnected from the rest of me. I wasn't sure what I was going to say or who I'd be saying it to. I knocked. A woman in her early 60s opened the door. Gray hair pulled back, as that had seen more than they let on. She looked at me like she already knew. Can I help you? She asked. I hesitated. I'm looking for someone. I'm not here to cause problems. I need to know if she's okay. She stared at me a moment longer, then opened the door a little wider. You'd better come in. The living room smelled like lemon and books. On the mantel were photos, school pictures, holidays, birthdays. But one photo made me stop breathing. A girl, about 16 now, in a choir dress. Same eyes as mine. Same curve in her jaw. Her name was on a wooden plaque beneath it. Nora J. Lane. She wasn't a secret anymore. She was real. The woman sat down opposite me, hands folded neatly in her lap. My name's Carol. I've raised Nora since she was a baby. She doesn't know? I asked. Carol shook her head. Not everything. We told her she was adopted, but not the rest. Your mother made us promise. I leaned forward. Why? Carol looked at me, and in her gaze was something I hadn't expected. Sorrow. Deep, honest sorrow. Because your mother believed the man she ran from would never stop looking. She trusted me to keep Nora safe. Who was he? I asked, voice tight. Carol paused, then stood and walked to a drawer. She pulled out a folder, yellowed at the edges. Inside was a newspaper clipping, brittle with time. The headline chilled me. Local investor under investigation in cross-border scandal. Multiple whistleblowers vanish in wake of inquiry. And the photo beside it? It was the man from the torn picture. Carol met my eyes. Your mother didn't just run from him. She exposed him. And she paid for it. I couldn't breathe. The story wasn't just about abandonment. It was about protection, sacrifice, and something darker, something unfinished. Where is he now? I asked. Carol looked at me quietly. No one knows for sure. But someone was asking about Nora last month. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in a small motel near Oak Park, the kind with peeling wallpaper and a vending machine that never worked. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how long the echoes of one person's choices could haunt the lives around them. My mother wasn't who I thought she was. Not fully. She had been hunted, yes, but also brave in ways I couldn't begin to understand. She hadn't just left me. She had traded her name, her face, and her freedom for someone else's safety. For Nora. And maybe, for me too. I read every letter again, slowly. This time not searching for answers, but trying to hear her voice between the lines. Each one had been written with the knowledge she might not live to write another. The man from the article, Daniel Garrison, had vanished years ago. Some said he died in Europe. Others claimed he was working under another name, in another system. Ghosts like him didn't disappear. They adapted. And now someone was asking about Nora. Carol wasn't sure if it was the same man. She'd only seen the car black, no plates, parked across the street 3 nights in a row. Then it was gone. I knew what I had to do. Not run. Not hide. But finish it. The next morning, I went to the Chicago Tribune building, armed with the folder Carol gave me and every copy of my mother's letters. I asked to speak with an investigative reporter, someone used to chasing things that didn't want to be found. His name was Luis Mercado. 40-something. Sharp eyes. Patient. I laid it all out. The photo. The names. The clipped article. My mother's letters. The location of the safe house. The identity change. The girl. He listened without interrupting, just nodding slowly, like he already suspected pieces of it. You understand this might blow things open, he said. Old enemies wake up when the lights come on. I nodded. She died trying to bury the truth, I said. Maybe it's time someone dug it up. 3 weeks later, the article went live. Front page. The woman who vanished. One mother's battle against a shadow empire. It didn't name Nora. It didn't reveal addresses. But it told enough. It brought eyes back to a case that had been rotting in silence for too long. A week after that, someone left an envelope at my hotel front desk. No return address. Inside, there was only one thing. A torn photo. The missing half. It showed my mother holding both of us, me and Nora, in her arms, smiling in a way I had never seen before. On the back, in handwriting that matched the old letters, were just 3 words. You did it.